Hey Ed, welcome back. Another week, another chapter.
Hi, Vasco. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. So I thought that today we could talk about chapter seven. And the reason why I wanted to talk to you about chapter seven is that I'm struggling with the beginning of the chapter. So let me just introduce you what the chapter is. So chapter seven is I wrote the title as such, and help me out here. The title of the chapter is How to Outline Your Book and Decide the Content That Will Wow Your Readers. So basically, chapter seven is a bunch of tools, empathy map, story map, and a surprise tool we'll talk about in a second, that helps you to outline the book. It basically allows you to feel secure that you know what you need to write, what is the sequence of what you need to write, how the things fit together, right? So those are the tools that we are going to talk about in chapter seven. What do you think about the title first?
I think it's too long.
Okay, so
as a,
help
as
me
a
out.
chapter
Like
title.
how would you maybe brainstorm a little bit with me? How would you change the title?
So, the original card that we have in our story map says decide what to write about. Why didn't you go with that one?
Yeah, that's so it was there before, and the reason why I didn't want to have it decide what you're going to write about is because we already mentioned that earlier. I don't remember exactly which.
Previous episode about chapter 4,
I think it is
the
chapter
topic,
four, right?
deciding the topic of your book.
Yeah. So there's already a lot that has to do with decide what to write about. So I thought it might be confusing. And also the other aspect is that chapter seven is where we talk about story map, and the story map is actually an outlining tool. It's
Okay.
not what to write about, it's what to write about and what structure and how things flow into each other. So it's more of an outlining tool. So I was thinking that that would be a better word to use at this point, since we are talking about a book. Um, I thought, maybe outlining is what Jennifer is asking herself. Like, how do I outline? I mean, it is deciding what to write about, obviously, but it's more of an outlining problem. What do you think?
So when you say outline, you mean curriculum design, in other words,
Yeah,
or
that's a good point. So
kind of.
outline for me is, as it says as we describe in the story map tool description, is about dividing the book into parts, like we have the three parts, right? Which are the three main objections. First, you're an expert, then you're an expert author, and then finally you get others to know that you are an expert author. So those are the three areas, right? Those are what we call user goals or customer goals. And that's just the beginning of the outline, right? And that comes from the story map. And the story map is one of the chunks, one of the big chunks of chapter seven, is where we explain how to use the story map and how that translates into book parts, chapters, sections within each chapter, which, I mean, in the end, it is like we had originally named it, decide what to write about. But I think the question in Jennifer's mind, that's why I use the word outline, is more, how do I outline the book? So it's not just what to write about, it's what to write about, what sequence, how do things fit together. Do you see what I mean? It's like almost
Yeah.
like
Okay.
storytelling at a high level.
Yeah. So throughout this section and all other chapters, what we are doing, and especially chapter seven is how I see it is a deeper dive into what we touched briefly in chapter 4, which was deciding to what topic for
Actually,
your
it
book.
is chapter 3 where we talk about outlining. So chapter 3 describes the 48-hour workshop, right? And in the 48-hour workshop, we have the SMIQ results, the empathy map, and then the story map, right? So now chapter 7 takes that and
Yeah. So
extends it so that it becomes kind of a tutorial on how to outline, how to structure, how to sequence the items you are going to write about.
So just to cover the background for people who are just jumping in this video, um, the previous chapter do cover. So by chapter 7, we assume that you have done the SMIQ, the survey, and you got some results. Now, when we were talking about chapter 4 in the last episode, chapter 4 does not assume that. So we are skipping some areas that you will discover as we'll go along. But here's what happened. In chapter 4, we decided broadly who your audience should be. It doesn't tell you their individual like details of how they are thinking, what they're processing, what they like, what they dislike, and all those things. That you collect directly from them, either through one-on-one interviews or through surveys, through the method that we are teaching here, SMIQ. Now, in chapter 5 and 6, we created that survey, collected that information, and now what Vasco is trying to do here is use all that knowledge to outline, as he just mentioned, outline the contents, create the structure of the book based on pure data. In other words, am I correct, Vasco, with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me fine?
Oh, your voice changed.
Yeah, Zoom for some reason had the wrong microphone. I hate when it does that. Anyway, so yeah, so pretty much that. So as you said, chapter 4, we decided the topic. Chapter 5, we identified and researched the audience. And then chapter 6, we did the SMIQ, we got the learnings. And now it's chapter 7. So we get all of the learnings from SMIQ. How do we transform that into a book, right? Or the book outline, right? So for example, if you are starting to plan how I'm going to talk about the book, you need a couple of things. And one of the main things you need is you need to know who you're talking to, obviously, that's clear. You need to know what are the main problems that they have that you get from the SMIQ. And then you need chapter 7. And chapter 7 is the empathy map. So that's part we've covered that gets out of the SMIQ, and how do we create that? That's empathy map. You need the book outline, that story map, right? The story map tells us how the book is going to flow from beginning to end. And then you need a secret tool we're going to talk about, which is the elevator pitch, which is what you use when, for example, you're crafting the proposal to speak at a conference. You're going to use the elevator pitch to give a short summary, a short, punchy, impactful summary of what the talk is about, right? So that's the elevator pitch will become your main sales conversation starter. And the story goes that elevator pitch is what you do if you have a buyer in an elevator for 30 seconds. So how do you get them to pay attention? You've got the elevator pitch. That's exactly what it is, right? You have 30 seconds right up in the elevator. How do you pitch the book? And this you could use to pitch to a conference organizer through the talk submission. This you could use to pitch to a book publisher like us, right? Here's my elevator pitch. What do you guys think? This you could use to introduce the book to a friend or a potential employer that you're interviewing for. Like there's many uses for that. But the elevator pitch also has a very interesting aspect, is that it forces you to crystallize the core of your message. And I think that's the most powerful impact of the elevator pitch. So chapter 7 kind of describes that and why it's there, and each of the parts of the elevator pitch, why they matter, how to use that in your conference proposal, and so on. So that's the kind of the core of chapter 7 is, I know who I'm talking to, I know more or less what I'm writing, but now I need an outline so that I can start producing the chapters, right? Just like we did in the 48-hour workshop.
With knowing this, it makes sense why, going with the original title that we were thinking of, decide what to write about. Now, decide what to write about did come from the words that our customers use or people who participated in the survey use. However, it can easily mislead the like, it can give much more shallow view of the chapter, because this chapter is super in depth. So my question is, what about if you use the word how to outline your book?
Just how to outline your book.
Yeah, because every time you say how to outline, that one word is like making it super clear what exactly is going inside the chapter.
Okay, how about that? What if we use Jennifer's words, and we have a two-part title.
Right.
And the first part is what to write about, and then comma, how to outline your book.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this...
Or how about you know, it's funny, I don't know the name of that the semicolon, the dot and a comma, like
yeah,
that mark?
semicolon, yeah.
Semicolon. So decide what to write about, how to outline your book.
Yeah. Decide what to write about, how to outline your book. Yeah, that makes sense, because then we are speaking to Jennifer, right? It's not just our terminology, it's also her terminology,
yeah.
and what she's looking for.
Yeah. And how we are teaching her that.
Yeah. And then the elevator pitch is going to be a section that is specific, you know, how to get a punchy conference submission summary or whatever. I'll figure out what to do, because we have, in a conference submission, you need the title and you need the abstract or the summary, or overview. I don't know. Depends on the conference. They use different terms. So then we can talk about how to take the elevator pitch and transform it into a punchy and impactful talk submission for a conference.
Right.
All right. I feel better about this now. Okay, but I had another problem for chapter 7, and this, I think, if you have the story map open, this will help us. So chapter 7 is after chapter 6, where we talk about learning the audience and what they are struggling with through the SMIQ. Before that, we had chapter 5, find where the audience is, and chapter 4, consider the topic of the book for the book. And I was thinking, like, what could be a good action scene to start chapter 7? Because chapter 7, there's a lot of background already. When the reader gets to chapter 7, there's a lot of stuff that is already established. So I was thinking, okay, if I'm going to walk Jennifer through what is basically a workbook in chapter 7, right? There's, okay, you do this, then you do that, and here's how you do this, and here's how you do that. I'm thinking, like, what would be the best way to place Jennifer in the middle of the action? Like, what's the action scene?
One of the things that I was imagining when you were explaining your question to me was, how about a visual action scene, like a picture of us messing with the post-it notes to get this thing done. So that could be also visual action, showing that, like, this is how it looks like. So that's just an idea, one idea. The other could be, it's been so long that I haven't thought about it, but were there some surprising areas? Because I remember when we worked on it, there were some elements that I knew in theory, like, for example, the empathy map and all those things, but I haven't actually used it in my action. And the way when we finished that, like, it was kind of like fascinating for me in a good way, that, like, wow, this is what we got out of it. So, but I'm not able to come up with the expression to that. I think that could be a
so,
good
like,
idea.
clear the fog. Is that what you have in mind?
It was not clear. It was more like an emergence, you know, when things combine to form a system, and then the way system function is different from every element of that system.
Yeah, that's a good point, because with the tools we have in chapter 7, if you do this properly, right, if you follow the steps and you pay attention and so on, what will happen is that the book will emerge in front of you.
Yeah, and
right?
that's an emergence.
And it's almost as if the book kind of writes itself.
Yeah. So I was thinking, like, if I can maybe recall my expression.
Okay, so that's a great idea. So I was thinking maybe then an action scene could be us at the end of the 48-hour workshop, when we already know, okay, these are the 3 chapters we need to write right now to promote the book, right? And of course, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. And then kind of do flashbacks,
use that to do flashbacks to when we didn't even know what the structure would be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And then kind of walk Jennifer through the process. Okay, so now we have this structure. We know exactly what to write about, what sequence, we know how to pitch it, but this is not how it started.
Yeah.
And then go back to that messing with the
Flashback.
post-its and having too much information. That's a good point, actually.
Yeah, and then rejecting some information. So it's not that we incorporated every piece of information we had. We actually chose to reject some, and it was like, wow, everything filtered out. Another thing, a caveat for people who are doing this is, because the time when they will do this to the time when their book will be finished could be a long gap, and there are chances that in a normal process, if they haven't done this process, there's so many decisions to make about the book, about the topics, about everything else. This process removes all the decisions, or majority of the decisions, about what goes inside the book and all those things. So it's kind of a big relief. And an example of this kind of phenomena is Bill Gates. I think it was famous that, I don't know the year, but he went in 7 days of uh, total planning by himself in his house or whatever. And once he come out, he don't change the plan much, but he trusts himself that this plan is a good plan. Because a person like me fall in this trap, like, just because I can create a plan, I can recreate it, and I can recreate it. And because of that, I don't trust my own plans unless somebody else start taking action on them, because I know that I can just invent a new plan straight out of nowhere. And that keeps me in a loop of forever, innovating or iterating. So this process eliminates that totally. Now I don't have to ever think about what else should go in this book. So it's kind of another big takeaway, that it helps me trust my plan.
Yeah. So exactly, and I think that's a good. Let me write that down before I forget. It helps me trust my plan. And the reason why that happens is that it starts from the customer's perspective. It is not what I want to write, and then I second guess myself. Oh, should I write this? Oh, should I write that? But it is like the process we've developed is almost like you have the customer telling you, no, I want this. This is my question. This is my struggle, right? And this is one of the key aspects of the 48-hour method, is that we're writing for the customers. We're not writing for ourselves. Writing for the reader. We're helping them solve the problems they already know they have. And this is a very important distinction, because a lot of the doubts come from the fact that we are making all of the decisions. But this process helps you to have the customer speak to you, right? To have the voice of the customer all the time present. Like we talk about Jennifer all the time, who's our avatar, who's the agile software development consultant who wants to be invited to speak at conferences so that she can grow her career, right? And obviously that helps us to be, I wouldn't say sure, but it gives us a clear direction, right? We're writing for this person. So unless something comes up that changes who this person is, we are not going to change what we are going to write about. And of course, we don't know. There might be things in the future that change, but this is what we know right now, right? So I think that,
I mean, I'm
that
sure technology changed, because again, the first time we touched this project was around 3 years ago. And then we touched again after 2.5 years of not doing anything about it. It was super easy for us to get back on speed because we had this plan in place. We don't have to reinvent it. We don't have to remember it. We just open the document. Oh yeah, this is what was that, and let's go. Let's get going. And we are
especially
up for
the story map has been very much like that. It brings us all the time to, okay, so this is what we need to write, because that's the struggle that Jennifer has. So I think that's also one, it's something that gives us peace of mind, right? It's like this feeling that, okay, we're in the right direction. Here's the map. We're still following the map. I mean, there's some small changes here and there. And as you write the chapters, obviously you start to think about things differently. Like we come up with action scenes now, right? We didn't think about that when we were writing the map, but
Yeah.
it became such an obvious thing to do at the start of a chapter to bring the reader right into the action through an action scene. So that's I think that's perhaps one of the key aspects of this method, is that it helps the book write itself, and it gives you the peace of mind that you're doing the right thing. You're implementing the right content into the book because it is the customer's voice.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so I got my action scene. I got my title. Um, so I wanted to just briefly walk through the elevator pitch. I don't know if you have chapter seven open, but I'll walk through this. So basically, the goal of this tool, the elevator pitch, is to uh, help Jennifer pitch her vision, or in the case she wants to go to a conference, to pitch her talk, to explain how her talk will have an impact on the audience and benefit the audience, right? So we have a clear example, which, of course, in our chapter 7, it is about our book. So it is our own elevator pitch. And we talk about the different clauses. I call it clauses. There are 7 clauses in the elevator pitch. And the first one is that it starts from the perspective of who is the person or the customer that we are talking about, right? So for whom is this book? In the case, it's Jennifer, who's an agile consultant, agile software development consultant, who wants to be invited to speak at conferences. And this wants to be invited to speak at conferences speaks to her most important desire, right? Like what's the goal? What's the ultimate goal for Jennifer to even want to read this book? And then we talk about the solution, right? So we talk about how to write a book to grow your business and develop your career and be invited to speak at conferences. And then we describe what the book is. And in our case, we describe that the book is a process that helps the book write itself, and a sort of a checklist to make sure you don't miss anything important. And then we talk about the value. So why is this book and this process important for Jennifer? And obviously, for those of you who've seen the other videos, you know, it helps Jennifer to be recognized as an expert in her area. And unlike what the alternative would be, which is working, you know, decades and slowly building a network, because if you don't go and speak at conferences, if you don't develop an audience, you have to slowly develop a network, which will then consider you an expert. Our solution gets you to quickly establish authority, because you're writing a book about an area of expertise, and to build your personal expert brand. Basically, it gives you in a few months what, if you don't write the book, might take you a decade or more to achieve, right? Because if you write the book and you promote it just like we describe, you will easily get a few hundreds or even a few thousands of people listening to you and learning from you. If you do it one by one, you know, job by job, it takes a year to even get a few tens. So you can imagine how long it will take to develop a wide network of people who recognize you as an expert. So that's kind of the elevator pitch for Jennifer, right? So because we are writing this book for Jennifer. And then in the chapter, we go through the details of why we chose this, and, you know, each of the clauses, why it's there and what to consider, and so on. And I think that the elevator pitch is one of those, Ed, that we should consider as a workbook to be given out as a bonus later on when we launch this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great idea, because I have a full-fledged, like, this big book about those kind of things in it. So every time I come up with new project ideas or something, and I have to name them or come up with a tagline and stuff like that, I don't remember the sequence in my mind, but then I go and open the book and then, like, try to find the chapters where they're talking about those, and pick and choose and combine. I think having a workbook itself will be super efficient, that every time you come up with a new idea, oh yeah, you come up with this book title, then you realize, like, no, it's really not, after some time, it's not the one that I want. Okay, follow the same process, come up with a different one. It just makes life so easy.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the most important tips. If you need to write, you need to look at certain tools, certain practices that help the writing come up, right? I mean, there is this idea, and many of us still have this idea. I'm sure Jennifer still has this idea that writing is some sort of an inspiration process, right? That you just sit down and suddenly magically, whoops,
Yeah.
now the whole book is in my mind. Well, yes, it could happen that way, but it's unlikely to happen that way, and it will take a long time for it to happen that way. So
Yeah.
this book is also about giving you the method, the structure that, as we say, helps the book write itself.
All you have to do is just write it or get somebody to write it for you. I mean, whatever you choose, or just dictate it and transcribe it.
Yeah, there's a bunch of tools that we're going to talk about later on about that, and that's another, like that's one of those e-courses that we should probably put together, like how to get the book written in a weekend.
Yeah.
Right. We have done that. It's not impossible. The question is, what tools do you need and how do you get it done and so on. So there's a bunch of tools that we could do it that way.
Yeah.
But don't forget that the 48-hour book method, the goal is to get you invited to speak at conferences, which means that you don't need to have the whole book. There's only a few things you need.
Yeah, that's correct. So you only need your brand as a thought leader in the topic of your choice. That's it. And your book is going to help you do that. And that's how we picked the book. And we talked about before, like in other chapters when we were discussing chapter 2 on other videos, why book. So we're not going to cover that part here.
What chapter was that, by the way? I think
Chapter 2.
Chapter 2, yes. Yeah. Why the book is the right medium for you to establish yourself as an expert in an area.
Yeah.
Okay, I got a lot of ideas, Ed. This has been very productive for me. Thank you.
Awesome. This is amazing because it's live and people can actually backtrack how we are talking about these ideas and come up with their own ideas for their own books. Cool.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. See you.